Hi guys, welcome to Books with Abuna. It's been a fun journey the entire year. We've been reading, a few writing here and there, but I have a guest in my seat today, and I'm very, very honored to have in my seat Nana Ekua Brew-Hammond. Now, I'm going to read a profile of her, and then we can start the conversation. Today, the book we are coming to discuss is My Parents' Marriage. If you have not read it yet, I think I would recommend it 100%. But before I tell you why I recommend the book, let me read a profile. So Nana Ekua Brew-Hammond is the author of children's picture book Blue, a history of the color as deep as the sea and as wide as the sky, and the young adult novel Powder Necklace. Her short fiction for adults has been included in the anthologies Accra Noir, Africa 39, New Daughters of Africa, Everyday People, and Woman's Work. Welcome, Nana Ekua.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Wow. So tell me, how's the book doing?
It's doing well. It's doing well. People, I love especially connecting with African readers who have, start telling me their stories and their families.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been doing really well.
Yeah. I like, when I read the book, I just thought to myself, wow, this book reflects the Ghanaian society so much. We went to church about a month ago, and my pastor asked, how many of you come from a family with one father and one mother? We couldn't find anybody in the church, which means that there are several people here who have step-siblings and have other siblings and have half-siblings and have parents elsewhere. Like, it's just a true reflection of our Ghanaian society. So tell me, what inspired the story My Parents' Marriage? Where did the journey start for you?
Well, that's a long answer, but the short answer is I was dating someone seriously.
Okay.
My now husband. And
Okay.
as I was just sort of, as we were getting serious, I started to realize that I had a fundamental lack of trust in men.
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of overstating it. It's a little dramatic, but I just started feeling like sort of going back to some experiences that I had in the past, but things that I had seen, things that I had heard, men are this, all men are this, all men are that. And I realized as I was sort of moving towards wanting to get married, but having a fundamental fear of what that would really mean, as I started to kind of unpack that for myself, then maybe because I was switched on to think about that, I started hearing it in friends of mine.
Oh.
Friends would say, oh my gosh, things that our mothers went through, I can't get married. Or I would talk to someone else and they would say, oh, I don't want my parents' marriage, or whatever it is. And I want to say as a caveat that this book is not about my actual parents' marriage.
I was about to get there.
Yes, because my mother's like, make sure everybody knows. It's so not about them. But I called it My Parents' Marriage, even though the book is not written in first person. I wanted the title to be in first person because, as I said, when we really start to meditate on it, we all have really specific feelings about our parents' union, whether they were married, whatever it was, and it has an impact on us, whether for good or for bad.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I mean, this is a very interesting journey. At a point, I thought it was really your parents' marriage. So thank you for the clarification, because I would have thought that's your story, or that's probably the story of your parents. But, why was it necessary to write about marriages here in our society, polygamy, traditional marriage, infidelity? Because the title of the book says My Parents' Marriage. So why the theme marriage?
Well, as I said, marriage was on my mind because personally I was on that journey. But I realized that marriage had been on my mind for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was, when you're of a certain age as a woman, it's like, are you getting married? Have you been married? Who's married? You're going to weddings all the time. So it's like marriage. And, So that has been really the topic of conversation amongst my friends for the past 15 years. Like, it's something that has, been something that we've talked about. So I've thought about it a lot. But again, as I said, as I was moving toward it for myself, I started to realize, like, whoa, we have a lot of unresolved feelings about marriage. And also when we look at, our society, Ghanaian society, and the international society. I live in the U.S. I grew up in the U.S. In the U.S., the divorce rate is like 50%. So it's like 50-50. You get in, you might stay married, you might
or
not.
you might not.
Exactly. So there's a lot of marriage just sort of is this, when you poke at it, you realize how sensitive we all are about it for so many different reasons. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about it.
Let's talk about some of the characters in the book.
Yes.
And I would take Kokui as my first character or my first example. She wanted different things in the marriage. She obviously wanted something else apart from her mother's marriage. She wanted to be a wife very different from her mother. How was it writing Kokui's story? How did you feel just putting it down on paper?
So before I answer that, I wanted to quickly say why I specifically wanted to write about marriage from a Ghanaian perspective and in a Ghanaian context is because I feel that as I started doing very specific research on the topic with respect to Ghana, I realized that we have a lot of, I said we have a lot of unresolved feelings generally, but I think within Ghanaian society, there are a lot of unresolved feelings because, as you mentioned in your church, many of us come from, whether it's our parents, our grandparents, or some kind of context where there was polygamy involved. And whether it was a good experience or a difficult experience, we have an experience on it.
True.
And I don't think, and interestingly enough, we don't really talk about it as much. People feel, like I said, when this book came out, someone kind of revealed to me, like, oh, I never really talked about it, but I also my parents are were in a polygamous union, and it was something that we were very ashamed of. So I just kind of feel that, this is something that's happening, and people have feelings about it, and let's talk about it. Let's bring it out in the open. With respect to writing Kokui, it was very difficult to write her character, mainly because, as I mentioned, it was coming from a very raw place because you can't write a book like this without confronting your own personal feelings about marriage. And so it was just really uncomfortable kind of mining my own kind of feelings about those kinds of things. So on a personal level, it was really difficult. But writing Kokui was also really refreshing because I think I allowed Kokui to be very messy. I think Kokui is a very messy character. She's not somebody who is always making what you and I might think is the best decision for herself. She's kind of heart first and running into things. So I think I wanted to write a character that was in that way pure, from her almost childlike. And I think that's Kokui. And my mom is Ewe, and the name Kokui I know is an actual name.
It is.
But it reminded me of like Eddie Kokui Nam. Like it makes me laugh. Like she's someone that is like, in her nature, she's someone who always just wants to laugh and be happy.
True. So let's move on to Kokui and her mother, Michelin. Mamaga. I like the way you actually. I listened to the audiobook. My whole experience is from the audiobook. I'm like, wow. Now, when I look at the decisions Michelin made for her marriage, for herself, for her book, in the book, during the interactions with their father Mauli, I was just thinking, this is such a confusing marriage. This is such a disturbing place to be as a wife and as a mother. So when Kokui eventually gets married, I was thinking, wait, I know Kokui wouldn't make the mistakes her mother made, especially because Kokui kept analyzing her mother's every action and every decision. But to tell you the truth, after she entered the marriage, she realized, oh no, no. This is not what I expected. I think she had way too many expectations for marriage and what it looks like and how to be in a marriage. So just talk to us about the mother-daughter relation between Michelin and Kokwi. What inspired? It was a beautiful story. I mean, even though they had differences, you could just tell that they loved each other from a very genuine place. So talk to us about the mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah, that's true. They love each other so much. I think that Kokwi, as I mentioned, she's very childlike and naive.
Yeah.
And so she judges her mother.
Yeah,
she's
a lot.
very, very judgmental of her mother.
Yes.
And she thinks she knows better than her mother.
It was everywhere in the book.
And her mother obviously is her mother. So she's a more seasoned woman. She's lived a life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And she's had to make some hard decisions for herself and for her children.
Yeah.
And I think that, so the two women, in some ways, I think that the mother resents the daughter's, resents the fact that the daughter questions her, because everything she's doing in her mind is trying to protect her daughter from what she experienced, or at least insulate her somewhat.
Yeah.
And Kokwi resents her mother because in some ways, until she gets married and kind of, is in marriage a little bit herself, she feels in some way, a small piece of her blames her mother for not being perfect enough, even though that's ridiculous, to have kept her father on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
And so that is the tension between these two women, because they love each other dearly and deeply, and they want better for each other.
Yeah.
But how they sort of envision that happening,
the conversation that sticks with me is the conversation Kokwi had with her mother before she left for the US. That would forever have a place in my heart, because it was at that point you could feel her resentment. It was at that point you could feel the raw emotions she had towards her parents' marriage. So, and it was at that moment she was about to take a step into her own marriage and experience the marriage for real. So thank you for writing that. It was a very beautiful conversation. The tension was well kept, and it was done, you could tell it was done from a place of love, which I really, really like, because when you read some books, you realize that you know what the writer is trying to do, but they kind of make it messier than it's supposed to be. So it was very, very tasteful. Yes.
Thank you.
So the setting of the book is quite unique. Your name is Nana Ekua Brew-Hammond. And then I read a book and it's everywhere. I'm like, what is going on? Did you go there to do research? And you mentioned earlier that your mother is Ewe, so maybe that's the background that you have. But it's so funny that you chose Accra. You chose Togo, which is the neighboring country for Accra. And then you decided to write about these two places. And if I'm not too correct, this one says Achimota. So the places are Achimota. And then I think, I don't know, maybe a border town in Togo, because the exact place was not mentioned. Okay. And then I don't think there's a book that has done that, right?
I'm sure
Writes
there
about
are.
both Ghana and Togo. Yeah.
Well, so interestingly, first of all, yes, my mother's Ewe, and when I lived in Ghana, I lived with my maternal grandmother. So, and my great grandmother for some time. She's the reason, the little Ewe that I know it because of Nana.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it, because I just, I'm an Ewe girl as much as I am a Fanti girl.
Yeah.
But our family is very mixed. My father is Fanti and Ga.
Okay.
So he's Accra boy, Jamestown, but also Cape Coast. So I'm used to living between these different places, these different cultures. And when it I wanted to, I think that this is from the outside perspective, I live in America. I grew up in the United States. When we talk about Africa, it's often in a very monolithic way. And then when we talk about, if we're going to get specific about a country, we don't, if we're talking about Ghana, then it's about Ghana.
Yeah.
But we don't realize, or people don't necessarily realize that Ghana is a very multicultural place.
Yes.
Chinese people are here, Lebanese people are here, British people are here. And within our own peoples, they're gone, Ewe,
several.
And there are connections that are right over the border. You know, there's, you know, if you're Ewe, you probably have family in Togo. You have some connection to Togo. And you know, there's so many more that, you know, there's so much of a cross-border connection. So I wanted to play in that space and really show that, like, you may be in Ghana and they may have erected a border between Aflao and, you know, Lomé, but, you know, the people are the one people.
I mean, I took a trip to the border town at middle of the year, and this man tells me that I live in Togo, but I work here.
Exactly.
And I'm like, wait, how do you go? How do you do that every day? He said, yeah, exactly. I work in the hospital, but I live in Togo. And I'm like, wow, interesting. And then you move the entire story to the US and come back to Accra. Like, I am still over, like, I just, 3 settings, Togo, Accra, and USA. And all of these places, you were able to depict places, people, in a very beautiful way. I mean, when it went to Togo, it was beautiful. I have never been to Togo, but I could just tell that this is... Have you been to Togo yourself?
I have, but my story, that's an interesting story. I actually took a car from Accra to Lagos. So I passed through, you know, obviously all of Ghana, you know, on that route. But then the minute you get to Togo, the vibe just changes.
Oh, wow, wow. I think I need to.
Benin, it switches, Lagos. So, you know, I really wanted to kind of play in that space as well.
Wow. That's an interesting choice of setting for especially 3 places. But let's talk about the main... Do I call him the main character? Because I don't think he's the main character. But then he's father. Everywhere in the book.
Yes.
Mawuli. So I'm trying to mention the full name. Forgive me if I murder it. It's Mr. Festus Mawulawe Nuga.
Yes.
Wow. Interesting. So he's just called Mauli Nuga. So that's all we get in the book. But 6 marriages, 12 children. I'm sure if you gave him extra lives, he would have married. He would, if he lived longer, he would have entered 7th, 8th, 9th marriage. He would leave and enter into a new marriage, maybe at his convenience or anything. But how did you come up with Mauli's character, his persona, like, how? Where did it even start for you? How did you wanted to portray him a certain way during his teen years, his life as a husband and as a father, and then even after death.
Yeah.
So talk to me about his character.
Well, his character to me is, I think when we think about, you know, first of all, we know that part of polygamy has to do with wealth and status, right?
Yes.
I mean, the part of how you are sort of broadcasting your status is, I can take on all these women because I can afford them.
True.
And I can afford these children. So, so I mean, and in every society, in our modern context right now, a rich man can get, you know, has a lot of opportunity to get a partner, any partner that he wants. So that was part of kind of, I wanted to unpack that a little bit. But I also wanted to unpack the charisma of a man.
True.
You know, I think that, you know, as a woman, you know, you might have dealt with, or in the past you deal with some guy who's like so charismatic, and you know he's like maybe full of it, but he's just got the gift of gab, and he's that person that you're just so drawn to. Because
I was just wondering how the women were so attracted to him. Even they knew he was married, they still...
Yeah, Mauli is just a very charismatic figure. He was fun to write because he was just that guy that you're drawn to, or that character, that personality. It's in women too, you know, it's that personality that is very charismatic, that knows the right things to say, that speaks just to your heart.
True.
And, you know, you're sort of taken in by him. But what's underneath that? He also has his own pain and his own, traumas that he's trying to overcome.
Wow. So as let's talk about still on Mauli as a father and versus as a husband. This is my opinion. This is not. This is just the opinion I formed from reading the book. As a husband, terrible, 0/100. Kept moving from one marriage to the other. But as a father, he loved, well, the ones that we saw in the book, he loved them, wanted the best for them. So as a father, he did very well just because of how I saw he raised Kokwi and her sister. And even little Kofi, you could just tell that he wanted his children. He was raising them well, doing the best that he could for them. In fact, his wealth was just to take care of his kids. But as a husband, God damn it. I really wanted to be the man, because why are you moving mad in the streets of Accra? So talk to us as a husband versus as a father. Which part was fun writing?
I mean, all of it. He himself as a character was really fun to write because, as I said, he has so many layers to him. But I think that, as I said, I think we have, as we were talking about polygamy and whatever, and our customs, right? Our traditions are such that once upon a time, a man broadcast his wealth by being able to have many wives and care for his children.
True.
It's enshrined in our laws that the next of kin of a man is not his spouse; it's his children.
Yeah.
So that is our society, right? So we love our children, but we don't love their mothers.
Yeah. True.
So that is the tension, right? Mauli is a man who, again, very charismatic. He likes women. He's able to get women. He's built himself up because he came from poverty.
Yeah,
so he's built himself up to a place where now he feels he can enjoy the spoils of his labor. And the spoils of his labor are women. Right? And the other part of it is being able to give his children a childhood that he didn't have.
Yes.
And the security that he didn't have. So I think that's the tension, because that's also in our culture.
Yeah. But, just when we were speaking, you talked about our customs and traditions. Things have obviously changed. We can see that marriages are, I don't know if, should I say getting better? I'm not in one myself, so I cannot tell if they are getting better or not. But truth be told, do you think that the effect of polygamy on this generation would go anytime soon, in the sense that these customs or traditions are there? I mean, there's the law as well, but really it's the law. I know people who are married legally, but do you know how many other marriages they have? They are just doing things. So my question is, these customs and traditions versus the law. And I like how you portray it, even though it was not in our setting this time or this particular moment. It really tells that times have not changed. We are still going through the same cycle over and over and over and over again. Talk to us about that. The customs, the traditions, marriage, our society, and how we even view men and having several wives. Is that going to even go away?
So when I was doing the research for the book, I was actually pretty, because, as just sort of colloquially, all I knew was you get engaged and then you have a white wedding, right? Like that's what I knew of marriage in Ghana.
Yeah.
And when I started to do the research and find out that legally you can have a customary marriage, which is the engagement.
Yes.
You can have an ordinance marriage, which is the white wedding. And then there is Mohammedan marriage or Islamic marriage, which is also enabling two Muslim partners or more than two to be in a polygynous, really not polygamy, because polygyny is a man having multiple wives.
Oh, wow.
So polygynous union. So when I started to do the research and find that those three marriages sit perfectly legal in our culture today, side by side, but because of the sort of tension between, tradition, colonialism, Christianity, modernity, because the law is saying all three are legal.
Yes.
So now it's like technically a man who's had a white wedding, if he goes and marries someone else in a traditional manner, that is considered, well, it's considered invalid, and it's also bigamy,
Yeah.
which is against the law. But who is going to enforce that law?
That's the
Who
thing.
is going to knock on someone's door and
Yeah.
say, you have two wives, you're
And
going to jail?
Yeah.
So I think that part of what was important to me to surface this is that our concept or understanding of marriage is unresolved. We are influenced by all these different things.
Yes.
And we have to resolve it for ourselves.
True.
Because now what is happening is, again, you have a lot of people, I don't know about most, I don't know the statistics, but many people that I know are in, ordinance unions. They've done the engagement, then they've done the white wedding, and they're married.
Yeah.
But then you have, because in our culture, it's okay for a man to have multiple female partners, then you have a culture of infidelity.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, but so it's, I think we need to resolve this issue for our men, for our women.
Clarity, some sort of
clarity, because if it's polygamy, then is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
If it's monogamy, then we have to confront it.
Let's talk about Mauli Nuga's last marriage before he dies with Hima Prempe. Hima is really a strong woman. She is like boss chick. That's how I saw her. I was like, yeah, this woman is going nowhere. I mean, she's good. I mean, and everything. But after his death, we see the issues with his status of wealth. I mean, the wealth he has versus his children's role in his life, and who is going to take that over the wealth. And I keep saying, the fight over inheritance, crazy. I'm sure if we check the statistics right now, it's going to be like one of the leading legal cases here in Ghana. Because it's everywhere. Siblings are fighting each other because I am this, my mother is this, and we have the right to this particular wealth, and we have the right to our fathers. So talk to us. Why? Because it's a beautiful one, but these issues are still prevalent here in Ghana. So why did you choose to write about it? Not only did you talk about his wealth, his marriages, but you still went on to talk about after death and the consequence of the repercussions when it comes to leaving all these children, having all these marriages, and then you do not even share the wealth. I don't know. I mean, I was so confused at a point. I was like, what is this guy doing?
So I think, here's the thing, when we talk about this sort of lack of resolution when it comes to marriage, that lack of resolution plays out after death, because a lot of the research that I did, because in our law and culture, the next of kin is not the spouse, it's the child.
Yeah.
The children are the heirs,
Yes.
the rightful heirs.
Yeah.
However, if you marry someone by ordinance, the woman gets 2/9 of a stake.
Okay.
So if the man has multiple children with multiple wives, it's diluting the children's stake, but the wife, the missus, the one ordinance wife, her stake is there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confusion.
So what happens? That means, wow,
But
now I get the clarity.
You also have male children have something of a more of a status or whatever than the
versus
women.
the female.
So there's all sorts of things going on, and some of it is enshrined in our law, but some of it is also cultural.
Yes.
So it's like, it's such a tricky thing to navigate. And really why it was so interesting to me, because again, it comes back to marriage and the at the base of all of it is love, right?
Yeah.
At the base of all of it, when a family is fighting over property, yes, they're fighting over property, and they're fighting over assets and that are needed or whatever resources, but really they're fighting because it's the thing that sort of vindicates
Yes.
the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it has become.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, this man has died. He's done his nonsense. At least let me get something from it. Or I'm the one he loved most. Or what have you. And so then in some ways, because you see a whole generation will be in court. The court case is not resolved, and it will move on to the next generation.
And it will just be hanging over their heads.
So part of it is like, if it's really about the stuff, then you would just, look, let's settle this thing and move on.
Yeah.
But no, you're prepared to continue the fight. So what are we really fighting about?
Yeah. I really like that. That was beautiful. But anyway, let's talk about publishing the book itself.
Yes.
How was the journey? I know you have 3 books. Okay, 4 when I count the children's book.
Yes.
Powder Necklace, On Relations, My Parents' Marriage, and then Blue. So that's 4 books. How was the journey publishing this one in particular?
It was a very interesting journey. I had started out writing a completely different book. I'd been working on this book for a decade, and it just sort of wasn't working anymore. You know, like, and it's so heartbreaking if you're a creative person and you've been working on something for such a long time.
10 years is a long time.
I grew gray hairs. I'm a different person than when I started this book, and to get to the end of the line and see that this is not what I wanted it to be, and this is not it. So it was kind of from an emotional place. And as I mentioned, I was like in the middle of getting, you know, I was in this relationship that was moving towards marriage. It was getting serious, and I was more interested in that topic than I was ultimately in the book that became, in that other book that what it had become. So I said, let me put this book to the side.
Wow.
It's still there. I need to go back to it, but it's such a painful thing to even think about that process and that journey. But I put it to the side and I started writing this, and this was like water. It just flowed.
Maybe because you were in the moment yourself.
I was in the moment, and like I said, I wrote from a very pure place, and I really knew what it was that I was wanting to say. Okay. So it just flowed. Wow. And it was a beautiful experience, the creation of it. Wow. And I knew when it was done. Like, I didn't have to like
think about
worry, like, oh, what do you think? I was like, this is the book. Wow. And yes, of course, I can take feedback and edits and critique, but like, I know what this book is. Yeah. So it was a good place to be after, you know, the journey of like kind of not, you know, being in that same place with the book that kind of birthed this. Yeah.
And just for clarity's sake, this is not your parents' marriage. No. And no part of the story is your story.
No. It is not my parents.
Nothing.
No.
Wow. Okay. So I'm just thinking, but was it hard to get an agent, a publisher? Was it hard to go through all that phase? Or this was just, as I said, because I'm thinking because it flowed like water, publishing it in itself was not too difficult.
Well, so the book that I told you that I've been working on for 10 years, I sold that book in 2019. Okay. With this publisher. Okay. And we went through a process of editing that took a really long time, editing that book. And when we were sort of at the end of the line where I realized that I don't even want to do this book anymore. Wow. So here I am. I am on deadline to turn in a final manuscript that everyone can agree on. And I'm like, this book is done. I can't do this book. Wow. So I just wrote this, and I just wrote it. And I was like, this is the book, so it has to work. And I remember writing it with like the gun to my back, like, it's got to work. So that was the story of how it came to be on the publishing end of things.
Okay, so here in Ghana, how do we find copies of your book?
So there's a bookstore called Vidya.
Yeah, Vidya.
It's in Laboni. They have a location in Laboni and a location in Osu, so they have copies.
Okay. It's also available on Scribd. The audio copy is available on Scribd, so if you are not here in Accra and you still want to listen, you can listen to it on script. That's where I listened to mine though, and it was very interesting. The narration was very, very, very good. Yes, it
Oh yeah,
was.
the woman who recorded it, her name is Ekuma.
Yeah,
And she.
I think I know her from Kinke for Hours.
Oh.
She was part of that audio recording as well. So I know the voice. Once I heard the voice, I was like, I know this voice.
Oh my gosh,
she's
she
good.
did an amazing job.
She's
I
good.
was listening because I've read this book a million times in writing it. When the book came out, I couldn't read it in my hand, hold it. So I sat in my bathtub for about an hour and listened to the first hour of her reading it. And I was just like, I'm so thankful. She did an amazing job.
True. Anyway, so let's far away from reading and writing and everything. What do you do when you're not writing these days?
I travel. I love to travel. I love to
last
visit
country
places.
you visited, or last city or town you went to?
Last city or town that I went to. Okay, let me think, because I've traveled a lot, partly because of promoting the book.
Okay.
The last city that I went to that wasn't home was San Antonio, Texas.
Okay.
Yes.
And how did they? I mean, I saw the photos you posted a few photos. I saw it was great. I think traction for the books, and I'm happy that people are starting the conversation about marriage and polygamy and infidelity and all these things. It's a conversation that must be had, so it's a good one. Are you working on anything new? I'm afraid to ask this question because there's a book that is a decade old on your laptop. Which is still not done. But are you working on anything new at all?
Yes, I am. I am working on another novel, and then I also have some children's books in the pipeline. So.
You know, I really love that you write for everybody, because you have a children's book, you have a young adult's book, you have an adult's book, and then you have an anthology which you edited, right? What can you not do?
Well, there's a lot of things I can't do, but it's a true blessing because getting the publishing journey for each of the books has been very different and very interesting and winding. So I'm so thankful. Like I actually couldn't believe it when this book was coming out, and I was like, wait, I have 4 books now?
Yeah,
oh my
you have
goodness,
4
I
books.
blinked, and after so many years of rejection and all of it. So
wow. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I mean, it was just a quick conversation, and we are here today, and you honored my invitation, and just like that, it was that fast.
You honored me by inviting me, so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And any last words? Did I miss anything about promoting the books? We've mentioned where you can find copies and everything. But if somebody wants to find you on social media, how do they find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, both at Nana Ekua Writer.
Okay.
And then I'm on Twitter, or X now, at Nana Ekua.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anika, for coming on my podcast. This is Books with Abna. The podcast is powered by the GCR studios. We are live in the studios today. It's been a while since we came here. And that's about it. Go follow me. Send us an email. It is bookswithabna@gmail.com. And we are on Instagram, Books with Abna. Send us a DM. Send us an email. We are interactive and we'll be happy to hear from you. Bye, guys.